In those cases where you're animating something and you have no idea where to go next, the biggest thing that'll help is go back to the basics. So for example, the ball with tail. Let's kind of show this here. So for anyone who doesn't know, the ball with tail assignment essentially is just a ball with a squirrel tail typically at the end of it, like so. And you just animate the ball jump and the tail is supposed to overlap behind it. Well, at its core, it's really just a ball. So before you do anything else, just go back to the very basics of a ball bounce. You're going to have your character jump and you get your jumps in there. Now, the key difference between a squirrel jump and then a ball bounce is that it's going to be alive. So now, this is where we have to take it step by step. What makes it feel that it's a ball bounce versus what makes it feel alive? And really, it's just the way that the character anticipates for the jump and then goes into the air. So for example, let's say you have a ball bounce. It's coming in here, jumping up there. You would have your frame before the contact up here. Contact squashes down, bounces out like so. There's no life to this, it's just straight bounce. Now it's not that this is totally lifeless, but it's just a reaction to hitting the ground. The other thing is that if the ball is stationary on the ground, it can't jump. It's just going to stay there and then roll. So these are the two areas, the contacts and then the jump, that are going to decide whether this thing is alive. And the biggest thing that is going to give that feeling of life is the feeling of decision making, of anticipating and preparing for an action, or absorbing energy. So when we land, for example, we're not just going to land, do a jump, and then just kind of hit the ground hard. We don't want to do that because that's going to bust our knees. It's going to be awful. So instead, if you have a squirrel jump, what's going to end up happening is going to be very similar. Your mechanics throughout the air are going to be pretty much exactly like a ball bounce. Comes through, comes in for the landing here. But then we want the feeling of hitting the ground and then absorbing the impact. So we can add a stretch pose right here next to the ground, like so. Technically, our spacing here is still increasing as it goes into the ground here. But by having this pose right there, this is going to absorb the shock. It's reaching out for the ground. If you imagine a character with legs, it's the leg reaching out to the ground first, about to touch the ground, before it comes in and bends down. Now you're going to go into the squash pose right here. And let's actually go a little less than that. So now we go into the squash pose, like so. And as we go through, once again, if this was a bounce or reaction, the next frame would be up in the air here. Boom, just bounces out. But this is a creature landing and absorbing the shock. So maybe the next pose, and I should be animating this on frames here, but the next pose could actually be a little lower here. So it's coming down, anticipating even more, kind of absorbing the shock before jumping out here. And once again, with the jump out, we can have it leave the ground, stretch like so, before it leaves the ground. So we need the stretch landing, exactly, stretch landing pose, stretch takeoff pose. That's basically the key that goes from a ball bounce to a living bounce, is that reaching out for the ground, pushing off of the ground, and then maybe some extra frames of absorbing the impact. That's really it. Everything else is exactly the same as a bouncing ball. So as you're going through here, it's going to be the exact same spacing going through the air, exact same arc. It is a bouncing ball. So you go back to your basics on that. And then once you have that, then you go to the tail and you go back to your overlap basics and your follow through basics. And really comes down to a good pose. So you want a good tail pose to start with. So start with a nice tail pose so it's not just a straight line. And then as you're going through the shot, keep in mind that the tail is trying to flow from one pose to the next. That's really what it's doing. So if we have, let's say, this jumping up here, coming through, up, over, and like that, the tail is going to, let's do this in a different color here so we can see it, drag back, point back to where it was before. So the tip of the tail is pointing back to where it was before right there. And then as it goes through, it's just pointing back along that same path. Something like that. And then as it comes down, it's going to be like so. So it's just creating this nice arc throughout the whole thing. So it's tricky, but that's the basics of it. Then from there, there's going to be some slight variations in different places, but as long as you're breaking it down to the most simple, you're going to get it. So the first thing is that bouncing ball, really getting that to work, because the tail, if the bouncing ball isn't working, nothing else is going to work. So I hope that makes sense.